Spinning records, got the lights down low. Souldisco, where the groovy people go. Hit play, let the music flow. Old school beats with a modern glow.
Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. But first of all, I'm wishing each and every one of you a great new year. To kick off the new year with Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco, we are featuring a legend, an absolutely icon, the great, the wonderful, the uncomparable Candi Staton.
Candi Staton.
You've heard the voice 1,000 times. On dance floors, in clubs, on late night radio. A voice that turns pain into power and heartbreak into an anthem. For most people, Candi Staton is Young Hearts Run Free. That glittering 70s disco classic that never really left the dance floor. For another generation, she's a soaring, soulful voice behind You Got the Love. The track that became a lifeline in clubs and raves across the UK and beyond. But behind those songs is a story that's anything but glossy. It begins in the deep south of the United States, in a world of segregation, poverty, and church pews. It runs through gospel, southern soul, packed nightclubs, broken marriages, domestic violence, alcoholism, faith, and finally, freedom. This is a journey of a single mother who used her voice to feed her children. A woman who survived relationships that almost killed her. An artist who moved from R&B to disco to gospel and back to the big stage, without ever losing that raw, unmistakable honesty in her singing. In this video, we are going to trace the real story behind Candi Staton, how she fought her way out of the chaos, how Young Hearts Run Free became a warning disguised as a party, and how You Got the Love refused to die and gave her career a second life. This isn't just a story of a hit record. It's a story of a woman who refused to be defined by what happened to her and chose instead to define herself by what she sang. Candi Staton was born Kennesetta Maria Staton in Alabama in 1940. She grows up in the deep south of the United States, in a world of segregation, poverty, and strict church life. As a teenager, she sings gospel, tours with the church groups, and learns very early what it means to live on the road. The music world she moves in is demanding and often exploitive. Long miles, low pay, but it shapes her voice and her work ethic. By the late 1960s, a new chapter begins, Muscle Shoals. Candi is introduced to legendary producer Rick Hall, the man behind the famous Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, a place that would define Southern soul. There, in one night, she records 3 songs. One of them will change her life. I'd rather be an old man's sweetheart than a young man's fool. A record that suddenly puts her front and center in the soul world and starts her first rerun of success. These Muscle Shoals recordings would form the backbone of her 1970 debut album, I'm Just a Prisoner, now regarded as a classic Southern soul. And it wasn't a one-off. Through the early 70s, Staton kept building a serious Southern soul catalog. Albums like Stand By Your Man from 1971 and the self-titled Candi Staton from 1972 before Candi in 1974 pushed her sound forward again. Record after record, she's not chasing trends, she's documenting survival in real time, one session at a time. But behind the scenes, there's another story running parallel. Candi is a single mother, raising children while trying to make a living through music. Music isn't a hobby. It's the difference between getting by and going under.
I'm I'm a single mom. And I only finished high school. I took my music for granted. I took my vocals for granted because when you're born with the talent, you're kind of like, oh, well, you know, it's just something I do. When it comes down, the push comes to a shove, as we say in America.
Yeah, of course.
And you got to feed your kids. You got to give them a place to live.
Yeah.
And here you go, and you start singing, and people like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you get a break.
Mm-hmm.
You get introduced to Rick Hall.
That break at Muscle Shoals leads to a string of R&B hits. I'd Rather Be an Old Man's Sweetheart sells hundreds of thousands of copies. Radio stations pick her up, shows start booking her, and for the first time, Candy can really support her children with her voice. But there's a cost. Long tours, unstable relationships, exhaustion, and the constant pressure to prove herself in a male-dominated industry. Still, one thing keeps pushing her forward: tenacity.
So regardless of what comes and goes, tenacity, I had that push, that drive to live, that drive to do everything. You couldn't stop me. I was unstoppable.
In the mid-1970s, the world is about to know Candy Staten as a disco star. She records Young Hearts Run Free, a song that explodes in clubs, on radio, and in the charts. The single becomes the centerpiece of a 1976 album, Young Hearts Run Free, which firmly establishes her as a disco artist and introduces her to a much broader international audience. To most people, it sounds like a pure feel-good anthem, bright, upbeat, perfect for dancing.
Even though Young Hearts Run Free has a wonderful beat, you can dance to it. It also has a message that is kind of depressing. Yes, it is. You get the babies, but you know, what's the sense in sharing this one and only life? Ending up just another lost and only what? You'll count up the years and they'll be filled with tears.
Those words come directly from her own life. At the time, Candy is trapped in a violent, controlling relationship. The man who should be protecting her is instead threatening her, isolating her, and trying to manage every part of her career. Rather than talk to a therapist, Candy turns to the only language she fully trusts: music.
When you've gone through really traumatic things in your life, I think singing about it gives you that therapy that you don't have to lay there on the couch with a psychologist and tell him about your childhood and all other bad things that happened to you. Mm-hmm. So you sing it out. And music is healing.
So when people are dancing to Young Hearts Run Free, they are moving to a beat, but they are also singing her deepest fears and regrets out loud. The song becomes an anthem for anyone who feels trapped, especially women in toxic relationships. It's joyful on the surface, but at its core it's a warning. Young hearts run free before it's too late. The darkness behind Young Hearts Run Free isn't metaphorical. Candy shares one of her most terrifying nights of her life. A story that ends up in her autobiography. She's performing in Las Vegas with Ray Charles. Her husband has been drinking and he can't find her in the venue. Candy is simply sitting in the audience watching the show. Afterwards, he confronts her, furious that she wasn't where he expected her to be. He drags her up to their room on one of the top floors of the hotel. And then he makes a decision that could have ended everything.
He picked me up, and there was a balcony right up from my suite. And he picked me up and put me in his arms like this. He was a big guy. And held me over the balcony and said, if you even cough, I'm going to drop you. That would have been like 22 floors. I would have been like a scrambled egg by the time I reached the cement. And I'm standing there, I'm lying there, I am like shaking. I'm like, what in the world am I going to do? Oh, Jesus, what am I going? I'm getting ready to die.
Candy survives because she stays calm enough to outthink him. She reminds him that the hotel is mafia-owned and that her face is on the billboard outside, and that if she falls, he'll never make it out of Vegas alive. He pulls her back in. That experience and many others like it doesn't just leave emotional scars. It becomes part of her emotional DNA, of her music, especially Young Hearts Run Free. And later, when she writes her book, she has to relive all of it, page by page. Her disco chapter didn't end with one hit. In the late 1970s, she kept releasing album after album. Music Speaks Louder Than Words in 1977, House of Love in 1978, and Chance in 1979. Records that sit right on the line between soul disco and the club future that was already forming underneath. While Young Hearts Run Free is born in the 1970s, another Candy Staton classic has a completely different journey. In 1986, she records a song called You Got the Love. At first, nothing happens. No radio, no buzz, no hit. Years go by. Then, one of the producers takes Candy's dry vocal with no music underneath and experiments with it over a house track that DJs are playing in the clubs.
Well, it was recorded in 86, and it lay dormant for 10 years. Nobody picked it up. We went to every radio station in America trying to get the song on, and they weren't interested. And one of the guys from the company that I did it with, wrote it, just my vocal, no music, just the dry vocal, and put it on a track that they were dancing to, and they just tried something out.
The reaction is instant.
Everybody rushed to the DJ stand and asked, "What's that?" Yeah. And they wanted it, and so they went and made a few records, and they sold them for an enormous price, and they were gone in one day. And he said, "We got some." Wow. So they mass produced it, and it was out. Gosh, my goodness, it was out probably 6 weeks before I even knew it was out. I had forgotten I made the song.
You Got to Love becomes a club anthem, especially in the UK. And I'm pretty sure if you were in the clubs around that time, you have heard it a dozen of times. It climbs the charts, gets remixed, re-released, and becomes one of those songs that refuses to disappear. The strange part is that it's a hit for weeks before Candy even knows it exists. By the time she finds out, Europe has already fallen back in love with her voice. From then on, Candy is a frequent visitor to the UK, and she notices that British audiences are different.
The difference is they know all my music. They sing with me. They join in like a big choir. Everybody's singing the lyrics. I used to say all the time, I said, if I forget the lyrics, I can read lips.
For an artist who was often pushed aside by the mainstream in her own country, that kind of support means everything. By the mid-2010s, Candy isn't just performing her past, she's actively processing it. She's working on a new album called It's Time to Be Free, and she writes every song herself. She describes it as a coming out of another painful relationship, turning fresh hurt into new music. At the same time, she's writing her autobiography, also titled Young Hearts Run Free. On the page, she goes deeper than any song can. All the stories she carried for decades, the good, the bad, the terrifying, are laid out in detail. Writing it is painful. When she reaches this chapter about the night in Las Vegas, she breaks down in tears. Her daughter tells her to stop writing for a while, but Candy refuses. She says she has to get it out, to really forgive. She has to tell the truth first, just like with her songs. The process of writing becomes part of her healing. There's another important part of Candy's later life: control. For years, other people told her what to sing, how to look, and what her image should be. Producers, managers, labels, everyone had a plan for Candy Staton. So she and her son Marcus decide to flip the script. They invest in their own studio. Marcus teaches himself the technical side of recording, mixing, and engineering. Since the 1990s, most of her records are made there. On top of that, Candy runs her own label and 2 publishing companies. No one else gets to decide what she thinks or how she should present herself. She throws the image out of the window and chooses to be exactly who she is. It's the final step in a journey from being managed, controlled, and abused to being independent creatively and personally. So what keeps someone like Candy Stanton going? Part of it is faith, part of it is responsibility of being a mother, and part of it is simply how she chooses to think. She jokes about people telling her to act her age, but behind that humor is a serious point.
And I'm out here on the road, and it's the mindset. People have to understand the mind is the one that keeps you young or keeps you old. I've got friends right now that tells me, I don't guess you know how old you are. I said, well, I guess I do. But when are you going to sit down and just act your age? I said, I'm acting my age. Chronologically, I'm 50.
From the gospel stages of her youth to the soul circus of Muscle Shoals to disco floors and UK clubs, Candy Stanton has refused to let anyone else write her ending. She turned trauma into an anthem with Young Hearts Run Free. She turned a forgotten vocal into a global club classic with You Got to Love. And she turned her own life story into music, words, and eventually freedom. And if you like to have some of her original recordings on record, yes, of course, that's possible. If you are more the kind of deep Southern soul personality, I highly recommend that you check out her framed recordings. These are very soulful, a typical Southern soul. If you are more into the disco vibe, I highly recommend that you check out Young Hearts Run Free, or the other ones I mentioned. Yes, these are out there and available. It's getting difficult if you want to have her first 3 to 4 albums. They are not as cheap as they used to be, also, once again, depending on the condition. But her disco years, they were massively successful, so they're available. If you like to hear a whole complete catalog or get into Candy Stanton, you'll find her music on Spotify, on YouTube, on all major platforms. And I also highly recommend, if you like that episode, check out the playlist appearing here, and I catch you on the next one.